Welcome, everybody. It's my great pleasure to have now in our series of presentations Jack. He's uh, really very enthusiastic about point clouds. He experiments a lot with different type of software, and not only from geospatial point of view, but also from architectural and yeah, a little bit art point of view. So I'm very glad to have your presentation here, Jack. And yeah, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Sissy, and thanks everyone for joining for this little session. Also, just I guess this is going to be a good way for me to talk through some of the recent projects I've done, just because I've had such a steep learning curve, really, with these technologies and concepts. I've been a 3D modeler for a long time, but being able to think about things in a different way around the points and the full workflow has been really interesting, I've found. So please, at any time, interrupt me and talk to me about anything that you might want to talk about, and we can chat at the end. So here's one of the a job I did recently with Philip Drew, who's just finished his PhD at Built Environment. He's actually a recognised historian. He's a older fellow, and he's did his work. He was very interested in looking at this, what's now a community centre in Annandale, that's just up the road from where I live, and it has quite an ornate facade made out of sandstone. It was actually built originally in George Street as the front of a warehouse. Then that warehouse burnt down in the late 1800s, and they relocated it to what became a church. And then now it's no longer a church. It's actually where they have jazz gigs in a community centre. But really, such a lot of work's gone into this facade. Not only that, but also, as you'll see, the carvings represent a very early, if not one of the first, expressions of Australian flora and fauna sculpturally integrated into a building facade. Like all sandstone, it's suffering the effects of weather, and the costs are perhaps going to be quite inhibitive, about $20 million, I think, to do a full makeover on this facade. And although it's a very important building in our architectural history, it might not be attracting that much funding in its current location or current state in need of repair. So quickly we've gone in and built here's my friends Mitko and Sabik helping out. Well, Mitko's actually leading this thing because I didn't know how to use the Leica C5 at all. So Mitko's gone and set up a good scan for us. You can see one of the markers just here, another marker up there, and we've done a big digital scan using 3 base station points to capture the current state of the facade, and to look at, I used a few other different techniques as well, a bit of photogrammetry to be able to collect these things. And you can see here what it looks like in Cyclone. And this is just using the color channel and where the grid points are, just a screenshot of what we had at the end of the day. And here's one of the main columns. It's very interesting. You can see it's a koala in a leafy context. So a very Australian column. And yeah, this is what it looked like just from the Leica C5. I also did some photogrammetry of the koala. So we've got a pretty good capture of the facade, to the point where we even might be able to use some 3D printed blocks that could fit into the areas that are dilapidated, like this broken bit of stone up here, when we could maybe lower the costs of fabricating repair material, or representing this in different virtual environments. I'm writing a paper on the different applications for architectural heritage work. And here's some very quick little prints I did. They're not that pretty. I was still getting my head around scale and resolution of the printer and things. They're a bit too small, but at least we just demonstrated the point that we were able to do a capture of the place and quite rapidly print that out on a 3D printer. Right now I'm currently working on a retrospective of the work of Shoei. He's quite an innovative Japanese architect, and I'm working with a team at Built Environment to document his work and do a few animations and things. So I went over to the University of Kyushu with Samad's BLK 360, and that's a beautiful little Leica scanner, and went to the model room of Shoei's. This is all of Shoei's models that he donated to Kyushu University, and here we are doing a bit of photogrammetry, and also took some scans of the whole room. He did some very beautiful models, and they're quite fragile by their nature. So I scanned the models. We've also got scans of the actual as-built buildings, and we're putting it all together for what's going to be an exhibition that we launch at the start of December. And luckily, it's going to be on at the Australian Design Centre, and they like it so much they've extended our season to go right through from December to January next year. So here's some of the photogrammetry that capture that we did for that particular model. Here's a quick little small printout we did of this particular one. Here's another very beautiful fragile model of what's the Naiju Community Centre, and obviously these are in Japan. And we were thinking of having an exhibition. Well, for our exhibition here, we were thinking of actually flying some of these models across, but that would be quite a challenging thing to do properly because they are so fragile. So once again, there's a very good imperative for digital scanning and being able to reproduce these models to not only exhibit them locally, but keep it in an archival fashion so other people can access the many different forms of how we've captured it. Here's another little printout I did just initially using this model to demonstrate it can be printed from a 3D printer. And as we were going, really discovered that many different ways, when there were many different workflows that were appropriate for different outcomes. So for this particular workflow, it was really just to rapidly capture some of the models that were in the model room, print them out, and then when I gave a lecture over there, I let everyone come and take them as little mementos, as little souvenirs or toys, which Japanese people are particularly fond of, I've found. And then we integrated into a broader scale work. So here's Takarabe-san, and he's been doing his master's project on scanning the Oguni Dome. And the Oguni Dome's a big stadium that Shoei built in Oguni. We were there right at the time when there was a big sumo wrestling event on. So each of these flags represent a different sumo wrestler. It's to promote the contestants in the event. Here is Takarabe with the drone doing the externals. Here's the Zola Frulik scanner that he was using. This is the low density PointCloud that they've published to Sketchfab. So we'll be releasing a lot of this content openly for other people to download. But that comes with a space limit. If you're publishing this to the web, it's a different model for if you're doing a high fidelity 3D print, or if you're publishing it as a VR environment, which is also done. They have different requirements. So this was really a good experience in multimodal approaches and capturing your data in a way that's fit for the purpose that you've designed it for. Mitko might find this image quite familiar, as Mitko's helping me do some voxelization. Because the points are not dense enough, once we go into a cross-sectional view, we lose the mass of the building. So we're going to voxelize that to make a sectional animation. This is inside the dome with the scanner. The dome is a beautiful example of architecture, as it's a huge span. It's very experimental for back in its time in the 80s when it was built, I think, or the early 90s. And the use of timber, they've got a sort of an overgrowth of forests in Japan, of commercial forestry. So it's a way to absorb a lot of this timber. He worked with some German engineers to fabricate these multi-junction points and to create a big space frame that's very architecturally manipulated across this space. And so I was able to capture a bit of it with the 360. Takarabe had used the Zola Frulich for the big capture, where he had 200 and something base stations set up. I just had 4 in the time that I was there, but it was a great way to be able to capture the feeling of the space, and also I just quite like the way it captures the context, which we'll see a lot more of in a second. Daniel Yu from our faculty has been helping on the project, and here's one that he's made that's designed for some very high quality fabrication that we're going to do. So this one wants to be very complex, it wants to be heavy, but it wants to be quite simple as well in its ultimate detail of resolution. So well structured and simple. So a different process for a different outcome. This one presented a lot of problems, as those of you that'll do a lot of LiDAR scanning will see straight away. It's very difficult to capture with all those reflections. It's also a very dense environment and very interesting. This is a train station in Oguni, and the train was cancelled, and so now it's a bus station and a community centre. Here's the exquisite model that Shoei made of this. This was very hard to capture with the photogrammetry just because it's so complex up here. There's very few points that we could pick up, but also just the reflections. So this one didn't scan that well. And here's one that Daniel did that he's just built from scratch that worked quite well for its purpose. Nice geometry captured there. And so these are some of the scans. So I've got many millions of points from here. I've been able to capture it in a way where there was no point in doing it in a survey accurate way, or doing it where it just had to look like a one-to-one exact replica, because it's already built. There's already other stuff showing that. And really with the quality of the scans, I find it was very artistic and really conveyed the sense of the place quite well. So I really went with that. I didn't try to fight against it and try to make everything perfect. And also the space is a very active space inside. There's lots of people, there's lots of space use, and it's shows really ultimately I think that the architecture was quite a success. So rather than scanning it and presenting it as something to perhaps attract investors to develop, it's a very different thing to be able to just capture the quality of the space that's happening many years later. So not only as built, but as lived in. So pulling out some of these little cross sections and captured in such high detail that I was able to go exploring and find all sorts of things that worked well. I didn't know there was an easel here and a pot plant, and I could still discover things after I was there. Also, this is just from using Cloud Compare, which has really impressed me. It's a really good open source software, really powerful, relatively easy to, relatively good learning curve, but also it just delivers something that looks very human, very like a watercolor or hand drawn. And it was very good to work with that aesthetic to be able to come up with some images that were architecturally based, but also with a minimum effort be able to actually capture all the other stuff that's going on beside the architecture. Also, of course, the site context. So the trees and the bridges and the cars. I didn't clean this up at all, actually. I was just going, I could have, I could go, of course, you could go in and clean up those points that have been generated from the reflection in the glass there. But I really thought, look, I'll just use this as a raw tool to be able to just take it as it is. And I like to work with those little glitches that were coming out of the LiDAR and go with the aesthetics that they were presenting. This is Naiju Community Centre. You might recognise it from that model, but also how different it is to see the building in its site, which is a great feature of the LiDAR. Here's where I'd combined an internal scan that our Japanese friends did, also my own scans of the site, and some other scan, the scan of the model. So I put the model into its geographic position and scale. And this is where Cloud Compare really just started to shine for me. It's just got such a nice quality to the renderings. I didn't take it into any other software, actually. This is #NoFilter. And you can see with these points, yes, I could have straightened that out, but I just, it just seemed right, a decision I made to just keep a bit of play with the different forms and the shapes to convey a sense of the place. Also, it's nice the way it picked up the cherry blossoms, which is a very strong giveaway that it's in Japan. I especially like the ghosted people that it would capture. And of course, I remember back in my days of studying architecture, you'd always get into trouble if you didn't have a person in your drawings, because it was there to show the scale of the building and how some reference point. So here we've certainly got people, and I think they complement the drawings quite well. Also, another reason why I kept the aesthetics the way it was is that Shoei himself was very experimental and innovative. This is actually a woven substrate that's got it covered in concrete. So we're exposing some of the technique of the fabrication of the dome, but also it's not an exact structure. As the concrete went onto the bamboo substructure, that really it moved around, and it's quite a beautiful organic shape. So why you might as well go with that flow and take that through into the imagery that's here. If I'm doing this myself by hand, I tend to overwork the drawings and make, I can't just leave them at a certain point, whereas sometimes with these, and also these are frames from animations where I was putting out many thousands of frames, and I was able to go back and just pick the ones that looked better for stills. That's that. And then here's some work that we're doing right now with Mitko and some of our friends from the engineering faculty. This is a fun little project where we're using the LiDAR units from autonomous vehicles. You might have seen Mitko present this recently. And taking the point clouds from that, and to use it as a way of capturing an environment, to use it like a surveillance camera, but one that preserves privacy and doesn't identify individuals. And so we're using it for crowd monitoring in public spaces. And just this concept, I think, is a great way to, it's opened up a lot of things to explore in terms of how we can have real-time mapping of urban spaces. Incidentally, too, I heard that Facebook have got a thing called the Omnisphere project, where they're thinking of tapping into all the different the units in the actual cars to form a real-time LiDAR, scan of the city wherever a car can see it. So that'll be interesting. I wonder how we're going to cope with all that huge big data situation, but certainly we'll be able to do some interesting analytics if it's accessible. Anyway, here's a quick proof of concept that we did right at the start. This is what it looks like to the scanner. So you can see there's just a minimum level of detail to be able to detect any anomalies. So we'd assume that everything that wants to stay still will stay still. But if suddenly something collapses or moves through that environment, the algorithm that Mitko's been working on can quite quickly pick that up. And importantly, Mitko's in Unity, he's created a synthetic, a digital environment to use for synthetic simulation and training of the machine learning algorithm. So yeah, that's a quick, and we're just sort of half an hour into that. I can show you some of the animations that I've done, and here's some of the software I've been using for these things. I like to use Adobe After Effects, and I've started using Premiere a lot more just because it is quicker and more effective just for plain out video editing. I haven't been doing that much color correction or anything. I think it's come out of Cloud Compare very well. I want to look into the open source mesh room a bit more and see how that can do different solutions with photogrammetry, and ideally it would be good to have a full workflow of where we can do this sort of processing just using an open source workflow. With Mitko's help, I've been dipping my toe into Unity a bit, but I've found it a bit of a steep learning curve, or something that I can usually take the software and work it out pretty quickly. But with Unity, that's I need to do a bit more work, you know. But I've used AutoCAD and Max for a long time, and Blender actually is working really well. It handles point clouds in a very interesting way. So it's good to see we're able to manipulate these things in existing software, yeah, so there's that.
And Jack, how do you use context capture?
That's really just for the registration, for ingesting the different point clouds, for doing the registration. Depends on the point cloud as to which one works best, whether it's Cyclone, context capture, or Cloud Compare. I haven't been able to get very good accuracy yet myself, so I don't call myself a surveyor, but for the purpose I'm using it for, it's like I showed, I think it's produced some quite nice little quirks and something that's fit for the purpose that I'm using it for.
And what is the process? Is it automatic, or you have to manually identify?
Yeah, it was very manual. I didn't have any control points set up when I was in Japan because it was doing a very quick capture. So, and for very complex, bizarre, weird buildings, you know, each one quite unique. So that's where, yeah, the automation was, if anything, it was really counterproductive. Just trying to get that happening, you know.
Okay, and recap photo and 3D Max.
Yeah. I've got Max there twice. Yeah, Recap was really good for doing the photogrammetry. So I used that for the koala and also for the Shoei models.
But actually, what about the photogrammetry? You texture something in integrated images with the point clouds, or what?
No, that was automated very well. Like I just put in the captures where I'd done, you know, maybe 48 photos going around the models, and its algorithm picked up very well and just spat out an STL that was very usable. And we then integrated that into a Unity environment. Daniel's been working in Unity as well with a third-party developer. And so we've just from that, it preserved its textures all the way through. And yeah, that workflow was very good actually with the photogrammetry.
Okay, and after that, you say Adobe After Effects Premiere. What did you use this one?
So what I do in Cloud Compare or in Cyclone, they've all got a bit of a different feel. Actually, Cyclone, making animations in Cyclone is very clunky. It does it, you know, and you can do it, but it's not got a very good user interface, you know. So I was preferring to use Cloud Compare. That's very nice. You can save a series of different viewports and then animate those viewports over time. and with all your parameters that you need, frame rates and frame size and things. And actually the frame size is connected to just the physical window that's there. But then I was outputting them as a PNG stream, and then I'd take that image sequence into Premiere or After Effects, and then I can export that as a movie file, MP4, or do a bit of editing in there and edit the animations together. I'll be able to show you some of the animations in a second.
Okay.
I'll just set it up. Yeah.
And 3D, yeah. And yeah, you said something about 3D Studio Max?
Yeah. Yeah.
You did animations there or what?
Oh, yeah,
Is it possible to compute, to process all these point clouds?
Aha, yes, it's not too bad at all, and good you should ask. I can show you. I did one of the buildings in Max because it really, it's a tool that was just a bit more appropriate to the job. So let me just stop there. Just give me 1 second. Share the screen again. Okay. So this is, you can see the animation okay?
Okay, it starts moving at least on my screen.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is the dome. I've cleaned this bit of noise up just because it was a bit ugly, but this is, you can see the people inside. This is a studio where they have music retreats up in the mountains. And once again, it's using this three-dimensional space frame.
And which software makes this animation?
This was Cloud Compare.
Cloud Compare. Okay.
And then I've dragged it into Premiere. There's one or two open source video editors, but there hasn't been that many around. But I've got the Adobe license through the uni, so I use all the Adobe stuff. And it's kind of industry standard. And then, so this is where this is all just one big shot. Oh, and then it's also got sound.
But how did you do the animation? Did you provide viewpoints or
yes,
you're just moving? Okay.
Viewpoint. Yeah, it was a whole lot of about 7 viewpoints.
Okay.
To move around, yeah. This is also where there were sudden changes. I was working with the sound composer, and wherever there was a sudden change, it was quite good because she'd suddenly changed the sound, and it really added a good spatial quality. Also, the outside would sound different to when you were inside, just as it would naturally. So that was something that we're very interested in, and I think we'll be able to maybe talk to the guys at Epicenter and to do some more experimentation in a Unity environment, in a submersive 3D environment that's where the movement's connected to the sound. And also just being able to, of course, have the point clouds all around. And, I looked into ways that we could join the dots and make it look solid or whatever, but I think the aesthetic was just so good. Just with the, it looks like ink drawing or a lead pencil drawing, I've just left it like that. You can see the way it faded out then and it's faded in. That was using Premiere. So I'd have all the different image sequences from the different shots and then edit them together. This is also available for download over the Sketchfab. And yeah, the final shot. Just go on to the next one. So here's Naiju. So that's one of the stills. And then we animate. can see the base stations there. I just left them in, the little black circles. And just having the site context here has just been really good.
And how does it happen that you have the grass and the tree in color and the building and some other trees not in color? Or you added the color to certain...
No, it's what I've got here is several different layers, and so a different scan would have had a different quality. In Cloud Compare, I might have turned the colors off for some of the scans, but yeah. And at this point, I was just, here we go. Here's this is where I made a ground terrain, and I've got everything on. I really like the detail that it picks up, like the light post and all the peripheral stuff. And when it's at this point, I'm really just sort of working as just as to what looks good and what conveys the quality of the sense of the place. It's a very, very realistic site that it's got once you in Cloud Compare to run to create the ground plane. And you can then, of course, deal with the trees separately and build up lots of different layers. So that's one of the things that I was doing in 3D Max was, and After Effects, was I was using, what do you call them, a channel where it was a, I've got a mental blank right now. What do you, in Star Wars where they paint the background of a scene? Anyway, it'll come to me in a sec. But yeah, you can sort of have many layers and treat those layers differently. So you're working in a 2D compositing way.
It actually looks quite good. Even it looks like a picture, not that much as a point cloud.
Yeah, that was a happy point where I thought, okay, this is working, And since I was going to be exhibiting it in the Australian Design Centre, one of the leading places full of very critical designers, I thought, gee, it's a big relief when I saw this, because I thought, okay, now this will be appropriate,
So you use all the points from all the stations that you scan. You didn't filter anything.
No, I didn't. No. I did a bit of a cleanup. How
many points do you have in general? What happened at the end? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I haven't got the final count yet, but this one was about 60 million. Yeah. So here's the bus station with its. This is an older one. I had a frame rate problem. You can see the way it's skipping a bit. But yeah, here's the. So I didn't clean that up just because it's kind of working, And it's something it's just the quality of the camera.
Yeah, you see, you have some kind of reflections from the windows.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I'm a fellow from Australia who's in Japan, effectively taking 3D photos and animating them. And so I can't compete with Japanese people in terms of, photography and let alone animation. But so I thought I'll just have to keep this as true as I can to its medium and be able to convey just the sense that I get from the raw data I've been given, rather than try to stylize it too much or, contrive it too much. Because I'm a terrible photographer.
Can you go a bit back, like a few seconds?
Yeah.
Is this like a flying saucer there, like UAV at the top?
Oh yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was one of the points. Yeah, a few people have noticed that. Yeah. Also, with some of the points where there'd be subterranean, like there'd be a reflected cluster of something. Yeah, so maybe I should have cleaned things like that up, but I just quite liked leaving them there. you know, it was an artistic choice I had to make. I quite like just, rather than filling it with, you know, pretty pictures, you know, we could, so this is just looking at the view from the underneath up, and then moving the camera in so the points would disappear as it got closer. And see, this is quite, you know, it's decorative. It you know, it's got a certain aesthetic to it. You can see obviously that it's just artifacts from the scan shadow. So if you're a surveyor or a scanner, you'd look at this and just think, gee, that's not proper. But I wasn't there to do an accurate survey. I was there as a photographer, really, to take some pictures of the final building, and they happened to be 3D LiDAR scans. So oh, this isn't the final edit too, by the way. I've still got just a few more edits to do. Also, there's none of the interior stuff. I mean, the interior, it was just so full of points. But yeah, it's been fun to work with this one. At the start, I left this one to last because it was so intimidating. There's so many points, so much going on. But luckily, it makes spatial sense. And you see the building in its context. So that was really all I wanted out of that.
What time in the year did you take the scans? Was it in the late autumn or what's that?
It was January, so it was
January.
Yeah.
There's no leaves.
Yes, yeah. So it was their winter, but it wasn't too cold.
Because on some of previous videos there was something like blooming, something pinkish, like cherry trees.
Yeah, cherry blossoms.
Blossoming.
Yeah. All these scans were all taken at the same time for when you can see the trees. Yeah. I'm not sure how. Yeah, this shot's just conveying enough information, I think.
And are you planning to show all these videos? What is the purpose of the exhibition?
Yeah,
if you elaborate a little bit, probably it's going to be interesting for Shoei because she's busy with heritage.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, Shoei, he's very well known. He's very successful, and he's retired as an architect in Japan, but he's not very well known internationally. Although one very famous digital architect, Greg Lynn, saw his work and immediately identified him as a pioneer of architectural computing because he'd worked with engineers in the 80s and 90s and build things like this that were impossible to do without computing technology. So he's really sort of published as a computer architect. And so we are working with, funded by the Australia-Japan Foundation. We've got a grant to put on an exhibition. And some of his buildings are quite different. This is one that is done in, this was where I did 3D Max for the Kinoshita Clinic in 1979. This was built. This is a dental hospital. So these animations are going to be shown as part of the exhibition. So there's some long playing ones. They're going to be published to the socials and the videos and the archive as well. And you can see here the way 3D Max has dealt with the PointCloud. And also I built I rebuilt the model in 3D Max because the PointCloud, I didn't have a good capture of the actual building itself. So I just built the building again. And also we're using multiple modes. So I'm working with Kate Dunn, Nicole Gardner, Hank Hausler, Daniel Yu, and some of the other team, Tracy Wu, and the guys from Code. And we've scanned a lot of his drawings from the archive, and we'll be presenting a lot of the drawings and also making 3D printouts of the actual models from, because it's too fragile to bring overseas. So the guys are doing some very high definition printouts of the work. And we've also made an immersive VR environment of the Naiju Dome. So there's an accompanying virtual exhibition because of COVID, and also just because it's been a good project to do in virtual reality to give people a sense of being in the building. Shoei doesn't even have a English Wikipedia page, so we're going to set one up as part of as an output of this project as well. I want to clean up some of these dots, but then again, I kind of like them as a bit of visual interest,
And this animation, which software do you use?
This was 3D Max.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've had a fixed camera path. So the big thing when I'm working with a sound designer too has been to be able to lock in the frames. So then the sound designer can, create a soundscape around this. So you guys will have to wait a few weeks until we finish everything and we can release the videos, and you'll be able to hear the sounds. But they add a lot to it, and it's a very nice another layer.
Because here the points are apparently made a little bit bigger.
Yes. Yeah, it takes ages to render this though. That one of the big problems with Max is that it doesn't render the points. I mean, you can change all the parameters. You can make them round or square and how big
exactly.
they are. But this bloody image sequence took me 40 hours of processing at least. So I need to make a few more changes of that one and polish it up a bit more after that. But yeah, so that's what it's. That's where we're at with those animations, and yeah, I like the animation workflow, and I've done a lot of this as a professional consultant for different architects and urban designers as clients, and also do a lot of art-based stuff and a lot of VJing. So I project animations for DJs. And the LiDAR data has been great for doing that. It's been really fun to be able to bring in a bit of 3D stuff and move it around in, it's something that just simply looks good, and in its raw form, So, yeah. So,
okay. Thank you very much, Jack. It's very interesting. And I guess everybody enjoy your Australian English. Finally, we hear some kind of native English. It's very interesting because actually, so far we are discussing how to process the points, and now you're showing how we can. That there are applications that want to have the point clouds as they are.
Just yeah.
So in a way, it's interesting to somehow tell us a little bit more about this and whether it's possible to. What do you think? Is it possible somehow to still segment the points to be able to get, for example, individual trees from the point clouds, and after that the building by itself? Is it going to bring something, or it's this?
No, absolutely. It's for the being able to do too much to it. It makes it you can make it look a bit sterile if you just take away all the quality of the point cloud. But with the segmentation, I was doing that for some of the stuff, especially that last one you saw with the dental building, where I'd have different layers. Because it took so long to do the rendering, I'd separate the things and do different passes where it would just render the trees, it would just render the ground, it would just render the building. And then I could, if I needed to make a change, I could just re-render that one little part rather than the entire scene. And then also you've got the ability in the two-dimensional video editor to independently make the trees more green, without making the other parts green. And then you can do other effects like drop shadows or make reflections or whatever else, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed, it was really very beautiful to see all these renderings. Yeah, go ahead, guys, ask questions.
Oh, shit just left and came back. Yep. Yeah. Oh, any
Yeah, I have also other colleagues that are considering point clouds shouldn't be processed. They have to be kept as they are because they contain a lot of information that after processing might be lost. And we have a little bit the same question as with all big data. What would happen if we have a point cloud of the whole city? We have now point clouds of cities, but somehow they're given on patches, by patches. But if instead of a 3D model of the city, you have a point cloud of the city.
And then you've got a big data situation of putting in the time dimension as well.
Yeah.
And seeing how that, so you can have a time machine. You can suddenly scroll back 3 years and see what the city looked like back then, you know. Yeah, very interesting. And I was just thinking, I mean, how much rare earth metals they're going to need for all this computing power. You know, we're going to need a lot of gold and lithium and all sorts of stuff, you know. Oh, thanks, Shafia. I'll just find the exhibition details. It's at, actually, if you go to...
Yeah, Jack, very nice presentation.
Hey, thanks, Miko.
I just wanted to say that I managed to do the voxelization. I showed to Sisi exactly this building once this Oguni voxelized. Yeah, I can even share the screen just.
Oh yeah, cool. This will add a lot of value to the presentation. That's cool.
Just. Do you see the model?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, hello. Yeah.
And
it's lovely.
Yeah, this is with 20 centimeters, and even this code is very efficient. The frame rate doesn't drop. You see, it is like 800 per second.
Okay.
You see, currently I cannot fly because I'm using the workstation, and our workstation is not here. I mean, then because of that, I'm using AnyDesk, and AnyDesk is not detecting my keyboard.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. If I go to the office, I can fly. Yeah, it will be very, very interesting. But currently, no. I can only change the a bit the view, and it doesn't render the color. This AnyDesk real time. Yeah, but we can visualize in this way, and it's very efficient.
Yeah, very cool.
The frame rate is it still keeps.
Okay, well, we'll talk a bit further. I just need that one shot of the camera panning through, like in a section of the building, so like looking into the interior.
Yeah, you need to go to the office.
Yeah, I know. That's Well, I'm going to be in there on tomorrow anyway. I'll start back to our LiDAR project with the scanners. I'll take some pictures of places where we can mount the scanners. Because one thing I didn't mention, guys, is for that project we're going to actually do some live testing. The only problem is that no one's at the university, so we can't do any crowd modeling because there aren't any crowds. So we'll have to maybe use a synthetic crowd in Unity again. Who knows?
Okay. So you are going to show the exhibition on the website of the exhibition?
Yeah. That's well, it's yeah. I'll share the screen and bring it up.
Oh, Josephat show up. Hi, Josephat.
Hi, how are you?
You're supposed to sleep.
Yeah, I was with my daughter, so I
Thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so here's the Shoei archive, and you can see here each of the buildings that we've selected because they're so strange, or each representing a different typology. And then here's the exhibition that's coming up at the Australian Design Centre. And we're getting along very well with Kyushu University. These guys have done the VR environment. Actually, how do I get to that? I've forgotten. Yeah. You'll have to see the VR environment a bit later. We haven't released it yet. Can't quite remember its URL, but that'll come later. So yeah. So yeah. Oh, thanks everyone for joining, and it was good to be able to give that work some air and to be able to just you know, get it out of my my head and my computer into towards an audience. And yeah, and very happy to collaborate with anyone too. If there's any visualization stuff, or you want any tricks with animating or using some of the software that you might not be familiar with, like 3D Max or something like that.
Yeah, actually, you use a lot of different software, so it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody can contact you for some tips and tricks, importing, exporting point clouds from the different software.
Yeah, I think that's
and
really
rendering.
important. You know, if you always use just one single bit of software, you can always sort of tell that it just looks like it was done in one bit of software because it was, you know. But then if you can sort of process things and layer them, then you can start to build up your own artistic style. That's all yours, really. You know, so encourage using many different types of software.
Yeah. Okay, so we can finish exactly on time this time.
I'm very punctual.
Yes. If there's no questions, so thank you, Jack, again for yeah, really very nice presentation, very artistic indeed. And yeah, we will see each other then next time.
Right.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, everyone.
Very much.
Thank
Cheers.
you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.